of times people say stuff that they didn't notice growing up, like people say we were poor and we didn't know it, or didn't think nothing of it at the time. That's what I learned later on was about the middle school I went to. It's pretty rough. Like the second day, 2 guys in my class got in a fight, and one guy stabbed the other guy with a pencil, and it went through his hand. You could see the eraser on one side, the point on the other. On the second day, and you know what happened to them? They got 3 days suspension. My dude had a hole in his hand and couldn't write for the rest of the 6 weeks. They got suspended for 3 days. I'm looking back now, I couldn't believe it. Now, one of those guys is in prison now. And that was the guy that did the stabbing. Not for the stabbing, it's for something else. Another time, the stabby guy wasn't at school. And you don't really notice when people miss school because it's whatever, but he had bad ADD, so when he was in class, you noticed it because he was always in trouble, fighting, doing stuff, and him and another guy were missing. Thought nothing about it. Didn't really notice until 6th period, where we had math, and the math teacher was a real sweet lady, but not like, she hadn't seen a lot of the world, even though she taught at that school for 5 years. And an office worker comes in, he waves behind him, and sure enough, the stabby guy and his compatriot come in, and the office worker hands the teacher a note, and she starts reading, and she gets more and more mortified. She's like, "You skipped school and hid in the basement." The school had a basement where part of the school used to be down there, but it burned, and it's pretty much empty except for a couple of classes that meet down there. And she starts screaming, "You fell asleep?" He'd fallen asleep with a cigarette in his mouth and caught the room on fire. And I thought they were going to take that pretty serious, because skipping school and all that went down, you know that all that happened? He got ISS for 5 days. That was it. In-school suspension for 5 days. He got longer for that than he did for stabbing the guy. Caught the building on fire and everything, and they gave him 5 days suspension. And then he did something else, because I think they searched his locker and found, I don't know if it was drugs, cigarettes, you name it, but he got an ISS even longer. And turns out he thrived in there. He came back. He was 3 weeks ahead on his work. He made the AB honor roll. Because in ISS, there's no distraction. Just you in a cubicle with a teacher and no one else. There's no talking. There's no interaction with this general student population. And they never put 2 and 2 together and said, hey, maybe we should keep him in this because it's good for him and better for the students because he's not a distraction. This was 6th grade. And I could tell you some of the other stuff he did, but it'd take too long. But 7th grade came along and he was in my homeroom again. And it wasn't just him. There were other people that, the other guy that got caught skipping, they made it clear if he got in trouble one more time, he got sent off, because the stabby guy got in trouble and they'd finally had enough of his shit and they sent him to alternative school. From what I learned about alternative school, if I thought my middle school was full of bad kids, the alternative school was full of bad kids that were all from my middle school. You get in trouble there, they send you to boot camp. If you ever watch Maury, where they have these really bad kids, they had it on South Park too. They bring in a drill sergeant to scream at them and get their act together, because 2 weeks at boot camp will carry you right up. 7th grade rolls around and there's other bad kids transferring in. Like, it was just awful. And the other thing was, the principal made it abundantly clear, if we thought we were special, you aren't. You're just awful. You are truly the worst kids ever. And you shouldn't be here. Y'all are just liars. And looking back now in retrospect, I get it. The school was full of bad kids. So you had to put on that front or they would have walked all over you. But man, people got caught chewing gum. They paddled them. They took that more serious than fighting. You got caught chewing gum, that was it. And I haven't mentioned the dress code. In elementary school, we could wear kind of whatever, which we were mostly good kids. So there wasn't anybody just wearing gang signs. But at the middle school, you had to have your shirt tucked in and you had to wear a belt. Yeah, I know. Doesn't sound like a big deal, but there were people that had sagging pants. If you got caught with your shirt untucked, they might give you a warning, but they might write your ass up. They took it that serious. There was a girl I grew up with. The second day of 6th grade, not too long after that little stabby fight occurred, she got sent home for not having a belt. Her mom was just like, what the hell? And she took her out of school and she transferred to a different district. And I went to go with her since kindergarten. Her mom was just like, nope. And she was the lucky one, because I think the other school didn't have a dress code.